In today's world, you're meant to just go to school, then work for the rest of your life, and get what you want in the world. That's what we're told in America. It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. Everything is run by old men that are out of touch with time but refuse to give up their power as that's all they want and don't care about the people who are the next generation. Most people just accept this reality. This is how it's supposed to be. All it takes is a few young people to stand up and rise to the occasion, learn the dirty and underhanded tactics, and take over. This is the story of Sanctuary. Sanctuary starts with the main character, Hojo Akira, a Yakuza member in Japan. For the first few chapters, he's a pretty chill guy, calm and smooth under pressure. This guy is always one step ahead of his opponents, but he does it in a way where the reader can understand. He has been shown willing to put his life on the line for a goal, yet he would never take someone else's life in return. His goal was to get old heads out of power that created no change, only pocketing money and soaking in their power. Blackmail and extortion wasn't really beneath him, as he would use this at the start of Manga to remove an old man out of power so his friend Asami, a young politician, could take over. He explains perfectly why he was Yakuza. He simply said, because you can do in a single day what it takes an ordinary man 30 years to do. After he said this, I was immediately sold on his character. He isn't a guy that wanted to rise in the ranks of the Yakuza and hurt people. He simply wanted to use them so that he could take over. When Akira was talking to Taishiro, one of his right-hand men, he would ask him what kind of future he wanted for his kids, and his response was pretty eye-opening. He would say, all I want is for him to not end up like them. And it showed a bunch of people walking outside. What he meant by that was he was talking about the normal adult, the business worker. Their eyes had no life. It was almost like they were walking zombies. All they knew was work. They got sold a dream that they'll get enough sleep to see. When you look into a kid's eyes, it always beams with life, but as they get older, that same life seems to fade away. Kids live as their heroes. Their parents and even TV characters give them life. They dream about anything their imaginations will take them, but as adults, there are no heroes. Life and its problem will destroy you and pull the cape off your heroes. When there's no one to look to but the corporated world, you will cling to that dream and shred your life and dreams. It's only been a few chapters, but there's already so much being told and too much to unpack. So far, Akira wants to make Japan a place where power is shared and change will be real. Akira and Asami were on the path to take over. We learned that anyone in power isn't just gonna roll over and give up after being in state of control. Being that high up and falling off just cannot be fathomed to most of those people. So they fought fire with fire. So we got a gang member and a politician versus the Japanese cabinet. They would kick off by trying to take out Asami by throwing him out of an apartment window, but fail as they would mistaken him for his driver. Akira would fire back while his eyes off. Akira's smooth style of playing never seems to fail, as a Yakuza guy named Tokai would get out of jail and ask him to sell drugs. Akira was never into selling, as all that did was poison the community, and that contradicts his entire ideology of making Japan a better place. This would anger Tokai and he would hit him with a bottle. Akira would get revenge by stealing 200 million yen from Tokai and giving it to Asami to pay off the Don so he could become a politician. Both Asami and Akira hated the Don, but both of them knew that they had to do what was necessary to get them in a place where they could eventually overthrow them. And they were willing to go to the extremes to do so. Time and time again, Akira would be right. He would always have everyone wrapped in his game and everything would continue to go as planned. Sometimes he'll gamble and roll the dice and come up the winner. But sometimes even he wasn't predicting everything all the time. Ozaki is the antagonist at the start. He was another smooth under pressure guy, but he's an undercover cop trying to get Akira in jail. He would always come up short, as he would never catch Akira doing anything. But that would change when Tokai continued to grow frustrated, as Ozaki would instigate a beef between Akira and Tokai. He would show Tokai that his guys were getting almost half their income from Akira while he was locked up. As the leader of his group, this would enrage him. Ozaki would use Tokai to get Akira wrapped up so he can kill two birds with one stone. We learned that Tokai wanted to do things his own way. His mom would tell Akira when he was younger that Tokai wanted to be done with brute force alone, but he will never succeed as he had no brain. He was dreaming that one day his day would come. She never told him the truth as she knew that would devastate him, but unfortunately his mom would pass away after a shooting. Without his mom pushing him and the Don never promoted him, this made him despise Akira as he would always dream of being acknowledged and becoming Don. As much as Akira and Toshiro do good, the story still reminds you that he's still in the Yakuza. We see murders, beatings, and most famously, betrayal, as the Don told Toshiro to go whack Takai. The Don knew Toshiro couldn't do it, and he was banking on Takai using him as bait to get Akira. His betrayal makes a lot of sense as he knew about Akira's race to the top ranks and trying to get the out of touch out the way. So he wanted to dismantle both Takai and Akira at the same time, just like Ozaki and the police. Akira would try to convince Tokai that they were both being played, but he had no choice but to take him to the Don instead. Akira, knowing Tokai wanted to be Don, would shoot and praise the previous Don and then telling him that he is the new Don. While this was happening, Asumi was convincing the old politician that change is necessary. With Asumi convincing the old politicians that change is necessary, with the Don in critical condition, it was time for change. It was time for Tokai to take his place, something he had always dreamed of. But no, he instead wants Akira to take over. This was also Akira's dream to rise in the ranks. His way got him further than Tokai, and Tokai knew so. Akira would become the new Don. With him being Don, Tokai and Toshiro on his side, he would start his dream of turning Japan into a new light, but he still needed Asumi to finish his story. Asumi would battle with the old men and would call out the younger guys for never even trying to move up. They would just sit there, hoping that they'll be one of the ministers eventually. He would lash out on them, being mad that they wouldn't take their own place. There was more of them than there were the old guys, and they just hoped one day that they would get their future. One day it'll be them, but then they would end up just being these same older men. And Asumi just was not going for that. Throughout this entire story from the start, it's basically a bunch of young men pushing for change. And some guys just don't want to see change. They're too frightened or scared. But that's what leads to change. When you're afraid, it's a do or die instinct. And that's all what Sanctuary was about. Do what's necessary to create change if you see corruption. If there's corruption, do what you can to change, as the new generation is what's going to be leading them on. So why not just take your place now if you know that the previous people ahead of you are just going to lead you into a pit that you can't even dig out of. But yeah, Sanctuary was one of those mangas that the more you read it, the more it tends to try to change you. And for once in my life, I would recommend to not read this, as this would inspire you to do a lot of things that you see in this. So please don't read this. But yeah, guys, I'll see you later. Sanctuary was a dope manga though.